In today's video, we're going to talk about Corelogic's latest housing market forecast over the next 12 months. And by the way, they downgraded their previous 12-month forecast that was posted 1 month ago. In this report, they talk about the changes in prices compared to 1 month ago. They also talk about the top 5 markets in which they believe home prices will decrease the most over the next 12 months. I have a lot to share in today's video. If you guys get any value out of today's video, then please hit the like button. Also, consider subscribing as well. We're getting very, very close to reaching 100,000 subscribers on this channel. I think we're only about 200 away from reaching 100,000. Absolutely mind-blowing. Thank you all for your support. I really appreciate you. So let's go ahead and dive right in. I have a lot to share. This article was just posted on August 6th. So let's first talk about what happened over the previous 12 months. So on a national level, this, by the way, is looking at their HPI, or their home price index, which is a measure of home price changes based on the repeat sales method, not based on the median sold price. In any case, just kind of taking a broad picture here, we're only talking about home prices on a national level. This includes distressed home sales. That increased year over year by 4.7% in June of 2024 compared to June last year. On a month-over-month basis, home prices grew by only 0.3% compared to May. Compare this to pre-COVID levels. That gain of 0.3% from May to June this year is much lower compared to historical norms. Let's first have a look at the report posted 1 year ago, back on August 1st of 2023. Back then, they predicted that home prices would increase by 4.3% from June 23 compared to June this year. So their forecast at 4.3% was actually very close to what actually happened, a gain of 4.7%. Now let's talk about their forecast here. Their forecast indicates that home prices will rise by only 0.3% from this June compared to July this year, an increase by only 2.3% over the past 12 months, going through June of 2025. This, by the way, is a downgrade in their forecast posted 1 month ago, because back then they were predicting that home prices were going to increase by 3%. Now it got revised downwards to 2.3%. So here's a look at the forecast from June this year through June of 2025, a small increase of 2.3%. This is more or less in line with long-term historical averages, when home prices tend to increase in the range of 3 to about 5%. It's worth noting, though, this 2.3% gain that they are expecting is much less than the gain we're seeing over the previous 12 months, an increase of 4.7%. According to the chief economist of Corelogic, she stated the following: the continued decline in the pace of appreciation can be linked to elevated mortgage rates. Although the Fed is anticipated to start cutting rates in September, high interest rates continue to affect affordability, and several markets in the South continue to see inventory increases that are pulling prices below last year's numbers. We can see that in Texas and Florida, for example, also Louisiana. So speaking of the Fed cutting rates, let's take a look at that, because there's some very, very, very big changes compared to 1 month ago. This is a fantastic tool I found. I've been using this for a couple of years now. It's the CME Group Fed Watch tool. So if you just Google Fed Watch tool, it'll take you to this. So this is basically the likelihood that the Fed will change the federal target rate, which is the federal funds rate, in their upcoming meetings. There's actually 3 more meetings this year scheduled for September 18th, November 7th, and December 18th. Now, this is pretty crazy. The current rate for the federal funds rate, which has an indirect relationship to mortgage rates, so when the Fed decreases the federal funds rate, or when they have expectations they're going to decrease that, that causes in general rates to fall. In contrast, when it's expected the Fed's going to start increasing rates further, that causes mortgage rates to increase as well. Anyways, the current rate we have right now from the federal funds rate, which is basically the overnight rate that banks charge each other for lending money for short-term lending, is at 5.5%. The street is expecting for the Fed by a 0% probability, basically no chance that the Fed's going to pause any rate hikes or decreases in their next meeting. In fact, there's a 43.5% probability, according to this tool here, that the Fed will decrease rates to 5.25%, or a 25 basis point rate decrease from 5.5 to 5.25%. But there is a 56.5% chance they're going to decrease rates by 50 basis points down to 5%. Now, here's the big kicker though. 1 month ago, that percentage was only 4.6%. So basically, no one was thinking that the Fed was going to cut. So basically, back then, no one was expecting that the Fed was going to cut rates by 50 basis points in their September meeting. In fact, there was a 71% chance back then that they were going to cut rates by only 25 basis points. So what a change over the past really 1 week because of that horrible jobs report we got on Friday that showed an unemployment increase from 4.1 to 4.3%, and a lot less jobs were added to the economy based on that report that was posted on last Friday. In any case, let's look at their next meeting scheduled for November 7th. There's a 52.4% chance we're going to be at 4.75%. So if the Fed decreases rates by 50 basis points in September, there's a 52% chance they're going to decrease rates by 25 basis points in their November meeting. So in other words, big picture here, they're calling for a 52% chance that we're basically going to be at 4.75%, which is 75 basis points less than today's rates. 1 month ago, that 52% chance was only 2%. Absolutely wild. Their next meeting after that is scheduled for December 18th. And there's a 46.2% probability we're going to be at 4.50%. Therefore, the street is expecting we're going to be about 1 percentage point less or 100 basis points less than today's rates at 4.5%, down from the 5.5% rate we're seeing today. So big picture here is that this is all based on expectations, what the Fed potentially could do, but this will all change likely based on incoming data. If inflation comes in hotter than expected, or if the jobs market shows further signs of weakening, that could all change the path of these expectations by the Fed. But the rates we're seeing today, or I should say the mortgage rates we're seeing today, are all based on these expectations that the Fed's going to cut rates in these meetings. So in other words, it's not like the Fed's going to start cutting rates and we're going to see a drop in rates on the same day. It's widely expected that the Fed's going to cut rates by at least 25 basis points in September. And because of that, that's one of the reasons why rates overall have been coming down. Going back to Corelogic report, in regards to their quote here saying that inventory is increasing in the South, particularly, take a look at this. This is a look at inventory levels this July compared to July last year. So in the South, we're seeing big gains in the number of houses for sale. For example, Florida is up by 70%, Georgia up by 53%, Texas up by 39%, Arizona starting to see a big increase as well, up by 54%, California up by 43%, and Washington up by 51%. This map, though, looks a lot different when looking at pre-COVID levels going back to July of 2019. There's basically 4 states that have more existing house for sale this July compared to July of 2019. That is Florida, up by 4.7%. And also Tennessee. Tennessee was not on this map 1 month ago, back in June. They had fewer houses for sale compared to 2019. Now they have 2.1% more. Texas is up by 6.5%, Idaho gain of 5.6%, and Washington getting very close, only down by 1%. Also, we're very close in Arizona, Utah, and Colorado. Going back again to Corelogic report, according to their chief economist, she said the following: housing market activity essentially froze at the end of the spring home buying season as high rates continue to compress affordability and dissuade potential home buyers. So please let me comment below. Are you guys waiting for prices to decrease or for rates to decrease, or both? I think a lot of people are waiting for home prices to fall, but there's no guarantees that's actually going to happen. The 0.3% gain in prices from the month before that, which of course was June, was less than half the increase seen between May and June prior to the pandemic, where we saw gains of a gain of 0.8%. So therefore, prior to the pandemic, we saw gains of 0.8% from May to June, whereas this year, a small gain of only 0.3%. So we are appreciating, or home prices are still appreciating, but not appreciating at the historical norms, I should say. In addition, cooling home prices continue to spread across more markets, and 9 states reported a monthly decrease, up from 3 states last month. The April surge in mortgage rates notably weighed on consumer sentiment, and consumers increasingly chose to respond to the anticipation of a lower mortgage rate environment later this year. So in other words, people are waiting on the sidelines for prices and/or rates to fall potentially later this year. One thing I'll add is that it's entirely normal to see home prices decrease in the last half this year. That's what happened. That's what has been happening for years. But back in 2022, we saw inventory double in less than 6 months, and also rates doubling as well. And that caused a correction in our housing market in 2022. So time will tell what will happen. In my opinion, it's going to depend on unemployment as well as mortgage rates in order to determine which direction we're headed towards the end of the year. All right, let's talk about home prices compared to 12 months ago. So from June through June this year, there was no states that posted an annual decrease in home prices. So every single state has posted gains. There's some changes ahead though, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. 1 year ago, this map looked entirely different because Arizona, Colorado, California, Idaho, Montana, Nevada, New York, Oregon, Utah, Washington, and Washington, D.C. all posted decreases in home prices compared to the previous year, which was back in June of 2022. Going back to this new report though, every single state has posted gains compared to 12 months ago. Now this is a difference though that you guys should be aware of, because there's some states that are getting very close to being in negative territory, and potentially we might see that in their next report or the report after that. So for example, Texas and Louisiana barely squeaked out a gain. This is basically saying here it's less than 1%, but because we know that all states have posted gains, this means that Texas and Louisiana have reported gains in the range of 0.1% to 0.9%. So very close to being in negative territory on a year-over-year basis. On top of that, the states that are shaded here in light blue have increased only in the range of 1 to 3%. So again, barely squeaking out a gain, and that is in Oregon, Utah, Colorado, Wyoming, Minnesota, as well as Alabama. Again, those states have posted gains in the range of 1 to only 3%. Much different compared to the 7% gains we're seeing in much of the Northeast, for example. So therefore, the states with the highest increases in prices from June of 2023 were the following: South Dakota, a gain of 10%. Then we have New Jersey up by 9.3, Rhode Island up by 9.2, Connecticut 8.5, and New Hampshire up by 8.2%. Let's also have a look at the changes in prices for 10 large metros in the United States. This is a report posted 1 year ago looking at changes in prices from June 2022 through June of 2023. Miami, Florida was the biggest increase, up by 8.9%. But basically, if you can kind of split the US in half, the western part of the US was experiencing decreases in prices year over year. In fact, Las Vegas and Phoenix were both down by 5.5%. In contrast, Houston was up by 1.9%. Boston barely squeaked out a gain of 0.3%. Chicago up by 3.6%. That was posted 1 year ago. And what a difference 1 year makes. Look at this. Boston is now up by 5% compared to the only 0.3% gain. Miami is basically doing very, very well right now, up by 10%. But all these metros except for Denver and Houston are up big time. I mean, what a turnaround. Las Vegas up by 7.5, Phoenix up by 4.6, much different compared to the 5.5% decreases from 1 year ago. San Diego was down by 0.9%, whereas this year it's up by 7.5%. If I had to guess why Houston and Denver are experiencing gains less than 2%, whereas other areas such as LA, Vegas, Phoenix, San Diego, etc., are seeing home price appreciation at a much higher clip, I'm guessing that the reason for this, just kind of speculation here, is that in Denver and Houston, they have a lot of home building going on there, right? Unlike San Diego, for example, a lack of houses to build or lack of land to build on, whereas Houston and Denver, a huge amount of home building there. But also in Houston, they're experiencing big increases in property taxes and home insurance as well. And that, of course, is causing some people to sell their houses or choose not to buy houses there due to the high cost of living, due to the increase in insurance rates, and of course, property taxes increasing as well for homeowners. Last but not least, let's talk about the top 5 markets in which Corelogic believes that home prices will decrease the most over the next 12 months. And according to them, this is all a very high probability, above a 70% probability of a price decrease over the next 12 months. So number 1 spot is Palm Bay, Melbourne, Florida. Again, a very high probability. Then we have the greater Atlanta, Georgia area, Gainesville, Florida, Northport, Sarasota, Florida, and Spokane, Washington, rounding out the top 5. Therefore, it's interesting to see here that 3 of these 5 markets are all located in Florida, which not coincidentally is probably due to this right here, a 5% gain in the number of homes for sale compared to July of 2019. Inventory spiking, whereas inventories basically going downwards in the Northeast, and of course in California, we're down by 31% from 5 years ago. And with that said, if you guys got any value out of today's video, please hit the like button. Also, help us reach 100,000 subscribers. I just can't believe it. Just mind blowing. I don't know what to say. I'm without words. Thank you everyone for watching today's video. I appreciate you guys so much. Have an amazing day, and we'll see you in the next video. Thank you.